The second version of Cinema Studio by Higgsfield is out. It's an extremely streamlined way of creating some cinematic scenes like we will be seeing in this video. We now have things like the director panel, speed ramps for each scene, multi-shot auto and multi-shot manual, and also the ability to select the genre which can impact how the video looks. And even though the people at Higgsfield don't really reveal which is the base model behind it, once you've seen these features, I'm pretty sure you've already guessed that it's most likely to be Kling 3, which was also just released a few weeks back. We, of course, have the ability to use some of the best cameras and lenses that are used to make some of the best movies we have ever watched. So this might just be the future of filmmaking. So let's see the example that we're going to be using in this video. So we'll be creating a 12-second long cinematic thriller-like scene. These two are going to be our characters, a detective and the masked killer. And this whole process will involve 4 steps. We'll first of all create these characters or elements so that we can use them in the prompt simply by tagging them, similar to what we did with the Kling 3 model. And again, that kind of indicates that this is the model behind Cinema Studio. We'll also need to create a starting frame that can also be done using the image tab inside Cinema Studio. We'll then create the master prompt, which is going to be used along with the multi-shot feature. So we'll create 4 to 5 different prompts for each scene. And then finally, we'll use everything together to create this scene. So let's get started. So let's create our elements first for our characters. So we're going to hit this option under director panel that says either, you can also, by the way, upload the image, but it's always better to add a character so that you can use it for the future scenes also, and then you're not just using a static image every time. So you can see I already have these 2 characters here, but it's very easy to create this by simply creating a new element. So I can just hit this. And now I had this particular headshot and I wanted him to become the detective. So this was done inside Nano Banana Pro. I simply went over to ChatGPT, got the prompt to turn him into a typical detective. And then I got this image. That's exactly what I'm going to upload right here. Once the image is here, I can give it a name. So let's say Detective John. Since I already have it before, I'm just going to put something like Detective John 2 here. Now, you don't really have to write anything in the description, but this create button is still disabled because we need to add at least 2 images. Now, one thing you can do here is if the angles of the subject are not too important to you, you can simply just upload this very image again just to satisfy that criteria. But I did want to give a closer look. So again, using Nano Banana Pro, I just asked it to also generate a medium close-up of this image. And this was the image that I got. So I'm going to use it here so that his face just looks better when I actually use it in the scene because the AI has more data to work with. So you can see now our medium close-up image is here. Now this button gets enabled and I can create it. Since I've already done it before, I'm just going to close it right now. And similarly, I had also created this masked killer where I just used 1 image and just uploaded it twice to satisfy the criteria. So we had both our elements or our characters ready to be used inside Cinema Studio. Now let's go on to the next step. So the next step is to create a starting frame which will ultimately be used right here because this won't allow you to simply move forward unless and until you put a starting frame. So you can use elements, but you also need a starting frame. So you can go over here to the image tab and then first of all, you can select the type of camera and the lens that you want. And this is important because if you have a particular type of look in mind, maybe you got inspired from a movie, then make sure that you select the right camera. And you can do this easily by going over to Google, typing in that movie's name, and then just type in which camera and lens combination was used for this movie, and you'll in all probability be able to find out. If you are not able to do that, then a safe bet is to just let it be on the default, which is Studio Digital, and then you can pretty much select any lens here. I just like to go for a typical prime lens here, so I can just choose Premium Modern Prime. And if you're going for a wider scene, if everything is wide, you're going to select a focal length which is slightly less, something like 8 or 14. For me, I wanted a balance here because the characters should be seen, but at the same time, we're showing them inside a house, so I do want the environment to be seen. So 35mm is a safe bet for that. You can even select the aperture. The lower this number is, the more shallower the depth of field is. That means the more blurred the background is. So again, I want a balance here. So I'll go for something like F4. And these are usually good settings to use. You can also, if you're getting confused here, you can just hit this recommended tab and Higgsfield will suggest to you on its own, and you can go ahead with that also. Again, when it comes to the base model here, we're again not sure because Higgsfield people don't reveal what is the model being used to generate this image. But I have tested this out, and according to me, this is definitely Nano Banana Pro behind it. But once I've selected these things, let's select the other settings before we go on and write in the prompt. So I'm going to select 21:9. This is the best aspect ratio if you want a cinematic look. I can let the resolution be on 2K. Now in Cinema Studio 2, you do have the option of generating an entire grid itself and not just a single image. This can be helpful if you're looking out for different variations and then you don't want to waste too many credits. I'm okay with 1:1. It's just going to give me one image. I'm fine with that because I'll make sure this prompt is good. So let's go on to the part where we ask ChatGPT to create this prompt. So on ChatGPT, I uploaded the image of the same detective, prompt to create a cinematic shot where this detective is holding a flashlight and looking for clues in a dark house. And you can see ChatGPT gives us this really nice prompt, which I'm going to take back and simply paste in here. And then just to make sure this is Detective John, now I can simply just put the @ sign here and select our element right here. So I don't even need to add any reference images. And that's all, we're good to go. So we can just hit generate and let's wait for the result. So I generated around 10 of these images and you can see we've got some fantastic looking results. So it's definitely our own detective right there. So it's very consistent and overall everything just looks good. So we can go through some of these shots here. Some were just failed generations and this was just stuck on generating, but overall you could see all these shots really look good, and I think I like this the most, so I will use this one. Now you don't even have to settle exactly for this look because there are a couple of things you can do right here itself, which is you can use the other Higgsfield apps right from here. For example, if I just click on this drop down menu, if I wanted to change the angle here, then I can just select this option that says angles. This will use the angles app that Higgsfield has, which will basically allow you to view this from any angle that you want. So I can zoom out or maybe view it from the side or behind him. And then that can be my starting frame. They also now have in Cinema Studio 2 something called as 3D scene. However, in my opinion, it just doesn't work that well because I did use it for one of the frames. So if you were to click on this, I did it for one of the frames here and the 3D scene came right here. This allows you to do something similar as to what the angles app does. That means you can move around, zoom in, zoom out. However, you can just see that it just does not work that well. There are some buttons that come here on the right side, but this time they're not just coming. And overall, I just feel, yeah, you can move around and then probably hit this option that says capture shot, and it's going to then create that as the starting frame. So right now, it's just not working that well. I was also over at Reddit where a lot of people complained about the same thing. So maybe this is still in the development stage. But basically, we now have our starting frame. And this is what I like about Cinema Studio 2. You don't really have to leave anything. Your workflow is pretty seamless. So now I can just go back to the video tab here. Remember, we need to use this as the starting frame. So I can just select this. And then I don't have to download, upload, do anything like that. Just hit the image generations tab. And all the images that we had just generated, they're going to show up here. So remember, this was the one that I liked. So now it's right here. Now let's look at some of the other options here before we go on and create our prompt. So first of all, we have the director panel here where you can add in the characters that you have for this scene. So we can again just select both the elements that we had created, and then we can use them by tagging them, or even we can remove the tags if they're not there in a particular scene. Now, talking about scenes, this part is important. We pretty much are not using single shot these days, as going out of fashion, because multi-shot just looks way more dynamic. And after Kling 3, I mean, this is soon going to be the norm. Now, you have two options here. One is multi-shot auto or multi-shot manual. So if I select multi-shot auto, this interface doesn't really change, because now what can happen is I can just describe a short summary of the scene that I want. So this is the fastest way to do it. And then we're completely relying on Cinema Studio 2 to generate this multi-shot scene in any way that it sees fit. However, this is not so great if you want some particular thing to happen at some particular time. And timing is very important to you, which is going to be the case, when it comes to really, really using it commercially and in a serious way. So most of the times, this is a better bet. I would say that only for very easy scenes, multi-shot auto can be good. But we're going to select multi-shot manual, and now you can see the interface slightly becomes bigger because we also have this option of adding in these scenes manually. So I can just add up to 6 different scenes like this. And for each scene, you can see we can change the prompt, we can change the settings. So for example, in scene 1, I can type in the prompt. We're soon going to get that from ChatGPT. I can, of course, select the aspect ratio. This is going to stay universal across all of the scenes. We're again going to select 21:9 for that cinematic look. And resolution, 1080p is fine. Remember, we're going in for something that looks like a suspense scene. So I can select the genre as this, sound on, and just going to go for one variation. So this is going to apply. These settings here, they are applying to all the scenes, right? But the prompt and the character selection and all this right here, like the camera movement, this all is only going to apply to each scene that you select and you're working on. So for scene 1, let's leave the camera movement at auto. Then we have speed ramp. So do you want it to be, you get different options like slow motion, speeding it up, linear, and of course you can also set it to auto, let AI do its job. So I'm just going to leave it at auto. And this is the surprising part, because if you combine all the durations of all the scenes, this can only go up to a maximum of 12 seconds. Because remember, Kling 3 allows you to generate videos up till 15 seconds, but that is something you cannot do when you're using Cinema Studio 2. So like I said, this is all speculation. Nobody exactly knows what is the exact base model behind this. So now that you know these basics, all we need here is the prompt for each of these scenes. So let's create that inside ChatGPT. All right, so this is how the process looked over at ChatGPT. You can see this is a pretty big prompt. So of course, I didn't type this. Whenever I'm describing the script and I want the following prompts from it, I'd like to use the dictate option here. So this was just me talking to ChatGPT. And you can see I'm just describing the script. So it's a 12-second video for Cinema Studio 2. And the script is like this, a very simple 12-second scene. The detective is just searching in the house using a flashlight. And then he goes near the window. He doesn't see anything outside, but when he turns around, the killer suddenly appears, like a typical scary scene. So that's what I've described here. A couple of important things you can mention. You can see here that I've mentioned that each prompt has to be within 512 characters. That's because this can only take in a maximum of 512 characters. And also, I've just mentioned that you can add any sound effects by adding S effects in the prompts. Like I said, because most probably it's using Kling 3, and we can do that now in Kling 3. If you haven't watched my video, by the way, on Kling 3, which I released last week when Kling 3 came out, you can just watch it using this link that you're seeing. I'll also leave the link to this video in the description. But now you can see ChatGPT gave us this multi-shot prompt. So what we can do is, this is scene 1. We can just copy this, go back here. Remember, make sure you're on scene 1 and just paste this in. Now remember, both the characters are tagged here, okay, by default, because we had added them here. But in this first scene, we only can see the detective. So we don't want the masked killer to make an appearance right now. Otherwise, you'll probably be able to see him somewhere in the scene, okay? You don't want that to happen. So just remove this from this scene. So this director panel can be changed from scene to scene here, okay? So we only want the detective here. Then we're going to go over to scene 2. And basically, we're going to do the same thing. Here also, we have only the detective here. So we can just, at the end, just make sure this is tagged here. Then we go on to scene 3. You can also, remember, this has to be 2 seconds long. So we can just pull this like this. Even the third scene is 2 seconds long. I'm also not changing anything when it comes to the speed ramp or the camera movement. If you have something in mind, you can do it. I've just seen, if you're not sure, just leave this on auto, to be frank. And till now, the killer hasn't come. So the killer is basically just there in the last scene where he comes, through the window. We can see him. That's going to be this scene, okay? So just going to make sure this is 2 seconds. And then we can delete scene 5 because we don't need this, and just pull this all the way up to 6 seconds. So the first scene is actually 2 seconds long. So this now becomes 6 because this is where most of the action is taking place. So we're going to hit scene 4. This is the important one. And most probably, this is where AI will mess up, okay? Because here the timing is very important, because he should not see the killer. Only when he turns away from the window does the killer come there. And things like this is where I feel AI is still getting better. However, if overall things look good, even that's enough. In 2026, things are only going to get better. But yeah, this is still the big challenge when it comes to these challenging timings, okay? So let's hit and hope, and we're going to select again. Remember, this time both of them are there. So we're going to select Detective John as well as the masked killer. And now that looks pretty set. We also have our starting frame, and it's going to cost us, double the credits, so 2 credits per second. So it's not too expensive, and all our 4 scenes are ready. So just going to hit generate. All right, so the first time I hit generate, it didn't allow me because it still said that I had surpassed the 512 character limit. That was not the case. I actually counted the characters. There were 446 or something. So ChatGPT did the job, but somehow it was just not generating it because of that error. So I just removed the last SFX part here. So we're just now relying on AI to generate that. But you can see this video is now finally processing. So I'm going to do this a couple of times. So let's see the different variations, and let's see all these results. All right, so our result is ready here. Let's play this. So you can see when it comes to the multi-shot feature, I think it does really well. Everything seemed very seamless. However, when it comes to things making sense, that's where things slightly go wrong. For example, if we were to just go to this part, I mean, at this point, he should probably show some reaction. He doesn't, right? He should be scared or something like that. He should seem shocked, but doesn't happen. But like I said, this is where the AI models really struggle when it comes to the timing of things, the expressions. But we're slowly getting there, because even something like a cinematic feel to this, a seamless multi-shot feel to this is something new, and things are only going to get better. But right now, let's look at some of the different variations. So I had used some different starting frames, and this was one of the results I really liked. Again, the problem was just with the ending. I think everything looked really good here, but it's just that when this guy comes here, and it would have been great if the detective was facing the other side. It would have probably made more sense. There were some results like this where we could see the killer, already when the detective is searching in the initial scenes. And then again, something like this, he just doesn't seem to react to it. I think the best result was this one. However, there was only an issue with the sound effect. So let me just play this. So you could see that this, from just it making sense, it had no issue at all, because the detective does turn around and that's the time when the killer comes. However, this sound effect, this should have come when he comes, right? When the masked killer comes in the frame. So what I did was I basically put this inside Premiere Pro and just delayed that effect slightly, and this was the result I got. And you can see this instantly looked better. So yeah, sometimes some manual intervention might be required. I also tried using the same prompt, but without the need for the consistent characters. That's something I like to do to test the model out. And the results were surprisingly good. And this just looked really, really good, because the timing was perfect, the overall look and feel was perfect. But again, it's pretty much of no use, because here AI just generated these characters. And finally, I just wanted to try the multi-shot auto approach where you don't go scene by scene, but just write in one prompt and then you're relying on AI. This was the result for that, and you can see that it's not going to look too great. All right, so that's it for Cinema Studio 2 right now. We've barely scratched the surface here. What I would say is that for simple scenes, this can definitely make your life really, really easy. For complex scenes, however, with some challenging timing like the one we had, might just require multiple attempts with a lot of tweaking of the prompt. However, if this is the second version of Cinema Studio 2, I'm pretty sure by the time the third or the fourth one comes out, we will be looking at a proper filmmaking AI tool. And talking about upcoming tools, remember Cdance 2.0 by ByteDance was just released, but right now it's only in China. So if you want to access it, then you have to have a Chinese SIM card to be able to use those AI apps. Once it's out officially globally, I will be here to cover it because judging by the previews, it finally feels like we have found the Nano Banana Pro of the AI video world. So it's gonna be huge. But in case this video helped you out, do give it a like. And for more AI editing tutorials like this one, make sure you subscribe. And I will see you next time.